it continues moving, and it sloshes on the shores all over the globe. What happens to the bulge in the middle of the Earth that's caused from the spinning? That flattens out. And what happens to the poles, which were flattened out? They surge with water. So anybody living close to the poles is going to see sea levels rise dramatically. Several hundred feet maybe. I think I read that that bulge is 13 miles high. And you don't notice it because everything is 13 miles high and it does not appear to be 13 miles high. But imagine that that fell 13 miles and spread out evenly. It would be about 6 miles deep all over the polar regions. I don't know if that's correct. That's why I say several hundred feet, just to be conservative. It doesn't pay to make Nordic people fearing that they're going to drown in 6 miles of very cold water. But if I was living in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, northern Russia, northern Canada, I would be reading this with great interest. And I'd be asking the question, what happens to this 13-mile thickness? The Earth is 26 miles broader at the equator, where all this water is, because there are 13 miles of water on both sides. Now you might say, wow, that's deep. Not really. The diameter of the Earth is about 7,900 miles. The radius is almost 4,000 miles. What's 13 miles? It's nothing. So is the water deeper at the equator? The deepest place on Earth is the Mariana Trench. I think it's about 35,000 feet deep. It's located just southeast of the Philippines. And who went there? 2 people went there. Cameron, the producer, movie maker, and the other guy was Richard Branson, Virgin Airlines, the billionaire. Why did they go to the Mariana Trench? Because they heard it was closing and they wanted to see for themselves. What do they know that we don't know? You can be sure that both of them are in the inner circles. And they are told things we are not told, and they are told not to tell us, and they are told why they shouldn't tell us, because 5.6 billion people are going to flee the coast as soon as the announcement is made. The announcement might be made by Planet X itself rather than our so-called leaders. I call them bottom feeders, low life, but they fancy themselves as privileged, a sort of royalty. They deserve things that we don't, and I hate them for it. So somebody is going to get 6 days almost of darkness, and the other side is going to get 6 days of suntan. Better get the suntan lotion out. I believe that Arizona will be stuck at about 10 o'clock in the morning for these 5.9 days. I lived in California. You might ask, why did I move to Arizona? It was Planet X. I was reading about it. I thought I better get out of here because a big wave comes in. It's not going to be good. I saw maps that California, the only thing that was left was about 150 islands. The highest peaks, tsunamis will increase. Volcanoes will pop. I recall when she told us that if any volcano has been active in the past 10,000 years, it will become active again, and that turned out to be correct. And the last paragraph says there will be major changes in geography as plates rattle. Well, we're already seeing that. Indonesia sank 80 feet. During the rotation stop, one of the signs that rotation is starting to slow is fine red dust falling from the sky as Planet X's tail drifts toward us. Then over a 24-hour period, Earth slows to a complete stop and stays locked for 5.9 days. During this time, Planet X looks huge in the sky. I think the panic will be set in by that time. The ancients recorded this as a fire dragon in the sky due to the appearance of the trail of moons and debris. Now, you know, in the Chinese culture, they have the dragon, and in the parades, they have this long tail. So maybe this is legacy from the last passing. But Planet X has not passed this close to the Earth ever, I think. That is scary alone. If it's closer this time than ever before and it killed 90% of the people last time, what are you going to do? During this slowing in rotation stoppage, there is an increasing and almost continuous moan coming from the Earth as the plates are stressed but cannot relieve the pressure. Sensitive people will become ill from the energy that rock under pressure creates, increasingly so. When plates are crushing together, they're making heat, and that heat can radiate. And if you're somewhat near the surface, you're probably going to cook. She has some nice images coming up. The next heading is during the shift. When the rotation finally starts after 5.9 days of being gripped by Planet X, it will do so as a jolt as Planet X moves past Earth into the inky blackness. It is best to be sitting or lying down when the time is getting close, and have a lot of toilet paper around. You will be thrown toward the current north. You know, what really scares me are the 300-mile-an-hour winds, because the worst hurricanes we have ever had are 165 miles per hour, and this is double that. The energy that the wind has doubles every 10 miles per hour. So if you go from 165 miles per hour, which is, you can't live through that. It picks up things and throws them at you like buildings and all those boards. I've heard about a 2x4 that was thrown into a tree and it went right through the tree. There's a lot of metal and glass, and if you get hit with a 300 mile per hour piece of glass, it could cut you in two. Look at this graph. The power of the 300 mile per hour wind. A class 4 hurricane, which is the strongest winds we've ever experienced in a hurricane. 165 miles per hour. If the speed goes up 10 miles per hour, the power of the wind doubles. And so let's look at that factor. We're going to continuously raise the speed 10 miles per hour, and we're going to double the power. This is very frightening. At 175 miles per hour, you have twice the power of the wind. And at 185, you have 4 times the power of the worst hurricane ever. Now do you see everything blowing away? If a woman has her clothesline out, it'll blow all of her underwear at you. Imagine a big woman's underwear coming at you at 300 miles per hour. You don't have a chance. The power of those underwear would be 16,384 times as powerful as the most powerful hurricane we've ever experienced. That's frightening. You could be killed by a bra. Now is the scary part. At this point, a great wind will start as the Earth is dragged under her atmosphere. So that's what she means by you're going to be thrown north. If the crust moves 90 degrees and it takes an hour, we're talking 6,000 miles. And that means you're traveling 6,000 miles per hour. And the atmosphere is dragged, it's only going about 300 miles per hour, but it cannot keep up perfectly. This wind will come from what is now south, but due to the change in axis, this is the new east. So the sun is going to be rising in the south, that's the new east, and setting in the north, that's the new west. The only problem is north has already shifted 45 degrees, and that means south has also. So I don't know what she means. If she wrote this in 2004, that was before that change took place. But we are already feeling the push from Planet X as it approaches. As the Earth gets dragged, the oceans try to stay in place. Well, this is inertia being explained in terms of animation or personal will. As the Earth gets dragged, the oceans try to stay in place, inertia. This causes sloshing of the oceans on the coastlines. First, the currently southern coastlines, and then the northern as the water sloshes back. So, everybody living on the south side is going to get wet first, and that means that Houston, Texas is going to get a blast from the Gulf of Mexico. And when it comes in, it's going to go all the way to Dallas-Fort Worth because it's all flat. It's not going to rise up and go to El Paso because that's the highlands. But it's going to sweep right across Houston, knocking down everything in its path, go all the way to Dallas-Fort Worth, knock down everything there, and then drag it all out to sea. I heard Nancy explain that on one of the videos. She says there's nothing to stop it. It will go all the way to Dallas-Fort Worth. She says be at least 160 kilometers, 100 miles from any coastline. I don't think that'll help you. They found whale bones, all ages, all busted up at the top of mountains. And that means that the water sloshed and threw them there and killed them. And so if you think you're safe being 100 miles from any coastline, think again. If you think you're safe because you're 600 feet above sea level, think again. The tops of mountains are not 600 feet above sea level. They found whale bones there of all ages, which means they died catastrophically. What could have caused it? I think sloshing seas would cause it, and a pole shift would cause it. Let's put the image on the screen now and talk about what we have. We have some new land emerging. And you can see that it's off the coast of South Africa. It's also off the coast of Antarctica, which is going to be warmer. We have existing land that will remain untouched, and that is Africa, Europe, Russia, China, Indonesia, Japan, Greenland, North America, South America, Australia, and Antarctica. That's the dark gray. The light gray is ocean. The lands that will submerge are India and the western 2/3 of Australia. To all the people of Perth, might be a good idea to go to Brisbane, Sydney, and I think New Zealand is looking very good. I would not go to New Guinea because there are cannibals there and they ate Michael Rockefeller. He ran out of gas with his boat. He swam to shore through shark-infested waters, and either the sharks ate him or the cannibals ate him. And one guy from the cannibal group came forward and said that a man did come to shore. They hit him in the back of the head with a hatchet. They cut his arms and legs off, put them on the fire. They drank his blood. They ate his brain, and they devoured his body. He was like 23 years old, I think. So you see that little area there to the left of Australia in this picture? You see the light gray and the dark gray. The dark gray is submerged. New Guinea is not submerged. Half of that island is New Guinea and the other half is something else I forgot. Sumatra, maybe? I can't remember my geography. But that little cutaway part in the northern part, or the upper part, that's where those cannibals live. I did a video about that. I don't remember what it was called. Maybe you look up Rockefeller and you'll find it. So that's the new geography after the shift. They have a picture of the water levels showing the gray area to be flooded, the light gray already submerged, the white is the ocean, and the darkest gray is above sea. So we're going to have a lot less land on this planet. Sea levels are going to rise with the melting of Antarctica, 2 miles of ice. If that's warm climate, how long will it take for it to melt? I don't know. A couple of years? It depends. If the sun is shining on it, it could melt pretty fast. What's reasonable? 10 feet a day? I don't know. 100 feet a day? I have no idea. It's a good question for an intellectual to ask. How long will it take for 2 miles of snow and ice to melt in Antarctica if it's warm there and the sun is shining on it? Another question, will Antarctica be the equator? Let's go back to that other picture. Yes, yes indeed, Antarctica will be the equator. What about Siberia? It will be very close to the equator, if not part of it on the equator. So if there's any snow and ice in Siberia, it'll melt. Now let's go back to the map we were on. We see that the entire Green Bay area has flooded. We see that Central America is, for the most part, gone, submerged. We see all along the eastern coast, it's all underwater. The entire state of Florida and much of Georgia is underwater, and the Mississippi River is now 50 miles wide and it's salt water. What about Cuba? Cuba has some tall mountains, and parts of it are going to be sticking out of the ground, out of the water. But a lot of Cuba will vanish under the waves. Will the sea levels rise gradually, or will they slosh around, kill everybody at the coast, and then rise gradually after everything settles down and the Earth returns to orbit? When Earth returns to orbit, we have a new equator. And if that part bulges, what does that mean? It means it's going to be 13 miles deep. And so a lot of land that is along that equator, let's go back to that picture again. Western Africa is on the equator. If that swells 13 miles, we get a bulge at all the answers. But that's okay. There's a lot of information here. Flooded and submerged areas. That's the map we just saw. The new arrangement will place the existing poles at the equator, where they will melt before the new poles freeze. The above map shows the extent of the flooding due to this temporary rise in the ocean level. So we're going to have a temporary rise in the ocean level from the melting of 2 miles of ice. I think that would raise the ocean something like 400 to 600 feet. I recall the Zeta said 675 feet. The next section, 16.14.2, timeline of the last weeks. When you can see Planet X with the naked eye, undeniably in the sky, time is short. This is the indication that the final 7 weeks have arrived, and a timeline of events is provided. This is very useful. I'm glad the Zetas provided this. At this point, emergency management teams are exhausted from the constant calls for help. By now, you should have a plan and be determined to implement it. Well, I'm in Arizona, and if the electricity and water is off, and there's no food and no way to get anywhere, life is over for me. All right, so she's counting 50 days. From day 1 to 8, we have a severe wobble. This lasts 9 days. Why is it 1 to 8 then? Okay, she starts with day 1 and she goes 7 days at a time. All right, so the severe wobble lasts 9 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. She screwed up. That 8 should be moved over 1. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and she's got an 8 there. The 8 needs to be moved over, and the dark line needs to replace the light line.